Hi, I'm Cecilia Paasche, and I'm a neuroscience major. So if I say to you that researchers can have a hard time talking about the forest because we're stuck in the trees, you understand pretty quickly that I'm not talking about a real forest or real trees. I'm using a metaphor to illustrate my point. And it turns out that humans understand and produce metaphors incredibly quickly, fluently, and easily. And this isn't just important for literature or poetry, this is essential for everyday communication. It's how we make sense of the world and relate different concepts. And it's important because we can take the same number of words and communicate deeper meaning and more effective communication. But how do we understand metaphors so easily? How is the brain processing them? And it turns out that scientists and philosophers have been trying to solve this puzzle since antiquity, pardon the metaphor. But unlike someone like Aristotle, I was able to put electrodes on people's heads and measure the electrical activity at the scalp while people were reading metaphors. So what we did, and that's what I did, so what we did was we compared electrophysiological responses to a single word that was set up by context to either be metaphorical or literal. And so for one example stimulus was the word claws. So if I tell you that two roommates got into a terrible fight and you better watch out because the claws are going to come out, those are not literal claws, hopefully, those are metaphorical claws. But if I tell you that I'm taking a very angry cat to the vet, those are very real, very literal claws. And so I compared the electrical activity after that single word, and I came up with many, many stimuli of this sort, but claws is one example. And we looked at how you're responding differently based on if that word was metaphorical or literal. And so what we find is that 600 milliseconds, around 600 milliseconds after seeing a word, there's a divergence between how the brain is processing it, given if it was metaphorical or literal. And we're seeing that there's an extra reanalysis step for the metaphorical words. And so there's two ways of interpreting this. When the brain is doing more work, we can look at that extra processing as indicating that you have to process the violation or process the fact that this was a violation of the literal. But we can also look at what we know is that when the brain does work harder, we remember things better, we have better representations, richer detail, and so you can look at this extra step for metaphor as explaining why they're so useful and why they're so effective. So when you think about this, it's telling us how the brain is understanding metaphor, and it's telling us about why metaphor is so valuable to us and why we're so good at it, and it's why it's so ubiquitous in our language. Thank you.